I've been given the daunting prospect of speaking on three vast subjects: language, education, and health, in the space of 30 minutes just before lunch. I know the lunch is long overdue, kindly bear with me. Let me begin by asking a seemingly irrelevant question. What is common to potatoes, tomatoes, rajma, chili pepper, corn, cauliflower, pumpkin, capsicum, guava, papaya, pineapple, sapota, sitapalam, coffee, and tea? Believe it or not, none of them is native to India. All of them were introduced within the last 200 to 400 years by the Portuguese, the British, or the Dutch. Can you imagine Indian cuisine, culture, or agriculture without these things today? In the same way, English is no longer a foreign language. After 250 years in India, it is very much an Indian language. Yet there are voices which say that English must go. But foreigners is not to be determined by present political boundaries. Linguists use the concept of linguistic distance, the distance between any two languages, in terms of vocabulary, grammar, and speech sounds. By this measure, Hindi is almost as foreign to a Tamil speaker as English is, since Hindi belongs to the Indo-Aryan language family and Tamil belongs to the Dravidian language family. Similarly, to tribal students whose mother tongue belong to the Austro-Asiatic or Tibeto-Burman language families, both Hindi and English are equally foreign. So the issue is not foreignness, but usefulness. This is where Hindi fails and English succeeds. English is the de facto global lingua franca. It is indispensable for higher education, science, technology, law, business, and diplomacy. Our freedom struggle would not have been possible but for English, serving as a link language. Our Constitution itself was written in English. Article 343 declared Hindi the official language, but also retained English as an associate official language. Article 346 allows English for union state and interstate communications. Article 348 provides that the language of the Supreme Court and the High Courts shall be English. It further declares that the authoritative texts of all bills, acts, ordinances, and rules framed by the Parliament and state legislatures shall be in English. But all this only as long as the Parliament decides otherwise, and therein lies the danger. Articles 344 and 351 privilege one regional language, namely Hindi, over all others. As linguist G.N. Devi tells us, 53 independent languages with rich traditions, Bhojpuri, Rajasthani, Magadhi, Marwari, Chhattisgarhi, and many more, have been misclassified as dialects of Hindi to artificially inflate Hindi census numbers from 25% to 44%. Actually, Hindi is spoken only by 25% of Indians, but the census tells you that it is 44%, which is not true. This distortion is political, not linguistic. The notion that a single language is essential for national unity is deeply flawed. The exact contrary is the truth. History is our teacher. Switzerland thrives because French, German, Italian, and Romance live as equals. Canada holds together because English and French share the crown. The European Union works with 24 official languages. Singapore didn't yield to pressure of its Chinese majority, 74%, to make Mandarin the national language because that would be unfair to the Malays, 14%, Tamils, 9%, and other linguistic minorities. Here in India, with Hindi spoken by just 25% of the people, we are trying to impose it on the rest of the country. Singapore rose to greatness by uniting on English as a neutral bridge while giving each community its mother tongue. In contrast, Soviet Union, which forced Russian language into unwilling throats, collapsed not from without but from within. This was one of the reasons for the collapse of the Soviet Union. Many people are not aware of it. And Pakistan, which tried imposing Urdu as the sole national language, alienated Bengalis, leading to the creation of Bangladesh. Ireland tried its native Gaelic and English as joint official languages, the way we are trying Hindi and English. But Ireland soon found that Gaelic could not cope with the needs of modern life. It has now switched almost entirely to English. The lesson is clear. Accommodation builds cohesion, compulsion breeds division. India will not be united because every man speaks the same language. India will be united because every man is free to speak his own language. Today, once again, there are attempts to impose Hindi or Sanskrit as a third language by stealth. The so-called three-language formula has existed since 1968, except in Tamil Nadu. Yet, the 2011 census reveals that only 7% of Indians are trilingual. What's the point of having a three-language formula for 43 years if at the end of it only 7% of Indians can speak three languages? Surveys reveal that half of our 8th graders cannot read fluently even in their first language, that is mother tongue. And many cannot manage simple English sentences. The government has never dared test proficiency in the third language because the results would have been very embarrassing. In this backdrop, the National Education Policy 2020's push for a compulsory third language is unrealistic, if not foolish. When most schools cannot teach even 2 languages properly, why try to teach a third? It not only imposes greater cognitive burden on the students, but also imposes avoidable financial burden on the state. And there is one more aspect which many people miss out. Unless a language is in the 8th schedule of the Constitution, which currently has 22 languages, it is officially invisible. It won't get recognition in schools or the right to instruction or state support. So for tribal children and minority language speakers in a state, for example, Thiru or Kurgi in Karnataka, in any state there are minority languages and tribal languages, the 3-language formula actually becomes a 4-language burden. Their mother tongue, no classroom support, the state's regional language, often the medium of instruction, Hindi or Sanskrit, and English. Isn't this a recipe for academic failure rather than empowerment? In this digital age, a third language no longer requires classroom instruction. With apps and AI tutors, languages can be picked up voluntarily, driven by interest and life needs. What schools must ensure is strong literacy in mother tongue and English. These two alone can provide both identity and opportunity. Census 2011 further exposes the futility of Hindi imposition. These are very interesting statistics. 63% of Indians, according to Census 2011, have never left their birthplace. 85% remain within their district. 95% never migrate out of their state. And as you know, jobs are concentrated in the south and west and Delhi. So mostly the migration is from the Hindi belt towards these areas, not the reverse. So when only 25% of Indians speak Hindi and 95% of the people don't move out of their states, what is the need for a lingua franca when English is already doing the job? So what's the way forward? 1, stop misclassifying the 53 independent languages and dialects as dialects of Hindi and show the correct figure for Hindi. 2, expand the 8th schedule to automatically include all languages with more than 10 lakh speakers, 1 million speakers. You will then, the number of languages in the 8th schedule will then go up from 22 to 55. You may think 55 is too much. No, but in a country with 780 languages, 55 is nothing. Then 33 more languages, including English, will be added to the 8th schedule. Amend Article 343 to make all the 8th scheduled languages official languages of the Union, not just English and Hindi and English as now, all the 55 languages, because that's what the EU is doing, European Union is doing. All the 24 languages have been made the official languages. Amend Article 348 to entrench English in higher judiciary and legislation. Amend Article 346 to entrench English as permanent interstate and union state linked language. Delete Article 344 and amend Article 351 to promote all 8th scheduled languages equally, not just Hindi. Adopt bilingual education policy, mother tongue plus English, scrap the 3-language formula. Our constitution is a wonderful document, but there's one part in it which is bad, or rather shoddy, and that is part 17 dealing with official language. And this part of the constitution, part 17 of the constitution, requires complete overhaul, in my opinion. Ladies and gentlemen, before turning to the issues of education and health, let me recall the wisdom of two great leaders from Tamil Nadu. In 1967, Dr. C. N. Annadurai, Chief Minister of Tamil Nadu, said, "I want the Union to be strong enough to maintain the sovereignty and integrity of India. All the powers needed to make the Union responsible for the safety of this country ought to be with the Union. But that does not mean that the Union, in order to safeguard India from Pakistanis or the Chinese, should think of having a health department here. In what way does that strengthen the sovereignty of India? Should they have an education department here? In what way does that improve the fighting capacity of the military personnel there?" A generation earlier, Thiru K. Santanam, member of the Constituent Assembly, had observed, "A strong center is indispensable if India is not to disintegrate. But I do not agree with those who equate strength with the range of formal constitutional powers. By taking upon itself too many obligations in relation to the vast population spread over the length and breadth of India, the center will become incurably weak. It's only by concentrating on essential all India matters while giving complete autonomy to the states in the rest that the parliament and the central government can be really strong." Those who have been in management and government know that's a funda called span of control. There's only a certain number of things that you can effectively do. Or if you put too many things on your plate and eat all of them, you will suffer from indigestion. The strongest case for decentralization rests on the principle of subsidiarity. Decisions should be taken at the lowest level of governance capable of handling them. What panchayats or municipalities can manage should not be escalated to states. And what states can handle should not be usurped by the union. Yet, India reverses this logic. What is a port? Nothing but a glorified goods yard, lorry goods yard. Shanghai port, which is much bigger than Chennai port, is run by the Shanghai Municipal Corporation. But Chennai port is run by the union government. Chennai Corporation can easily run it. Massive union ministries exist even for state-list subjects. They duplicate state functions, tie funds to rigid conditions, impose one-size-fits-all centrally sponsored schemes, and micromanage the implementation of schemes. For example, to implement a scheme called PMGSY, Rural Road Scheme, we have to send road-by-road proposals to Government of India. And for implementing the Smart City Mission, we have to send work-by-work proposal to Government of India. This is extremely foolish in my opinion. Remember that Indian states are comparable to European countries. Tamil Nadu and Karnataka can be compared to Germany and France. If the union government refuses to trust states with responsibilities, especially education and health, which by their very nature are local subjects, it is effectively declaring that Indians are less capable of self-governance than Europeans. It's actually an insult when you say states are not capable of doing things well. You are saying in so many words that Indians are unfit and Europeans and others are better. The cost of this mistrust is a democracy deficit. Distant centralized control breeds delay, insensitivity, and weak accountability. True strength lies not in holding power at the center, but in empowering states and local bodies. Applied to education, the principle of subsidiarity means schools, colleges, and universities are best governed by states, while the union focuses on institutions of national importance, advanced research, and setting broad standards. But India has inverted this logic. Can you believe the central government is running schools, colleges, and universities, duplicating state functions and diverting scarce resources from critical areas like research and development? India spends only 0.65% of its GDP on R&D compared to 3.5% in the US or 2.4% in China. Perhaps if the center stopped running schools, it can divert more fund to R&D. Over-centralization, rigid regulation by bodies like the UGC and AICT have reduced our universities to glorified affiliated colleges. The UGC and AICT have stopped giving funds long back, but they're giving us plenty of regulations. What began as coordination has degenerated into command and control. And after all this regulation and micromanagement, I can understand if the outcomes are excellent, but they are far from it. According to the India Skills Report 2023, only 43% of Indian students are considered employable. In the Times Higher Education 2025 rankings, no Indian university reached the global top 200. Not even a single Indian university or institution is in the top 200 rankings. Our venerable Indian Institute of Science figures between 200 and 250. JNU is somewhere between 800 and 1000. BITS Pilani is somewhere between 800 and 1000. So that's where our great institutions stand in terms of global rankings. In QS 2025 rankings, only 3 IITs, Delhi, Bombay, and Madras, figure. At the school level, there is a competition called Program for International Student Assessment, which is conducted once in 3 years to compare the standards of international schools across countries. India came 73rd out of 74 countries in the PISA 2009, just above Kyrgyzstan. Luckily, Kyrgyzstan saved us over this one, and has since boycotted all further rounds. Meanwhile, countries like Singapore, Finland, South Korea, and China top the charts. These dismal results show that centralization has not resulted into quality. What is the situation in other federations? In all other federations, United States, Canada, Germany, Australia, the center, the federal government, doesn't run universities, doesn't run schools, doesn't run colleges. They run institutions of advanced research, R&D, but they don't run schools, colleges, and universities. When the Constitution came into force in 1950, entry 11 of the state list placed education firmly under state control, recognizing its deep ties to language, culture, and local realities. The Union's role was narrow. Entries 63 to 68 of the Constitution of the Union list allowed it to manage institutions of national importance and coordinate minimum standards. The balance was clear. States would govern, the Union would coordinate. When the Constitution first was enacted, they followed the international model. Education was with the states, the Union was supposed to only coordinate. The equilibrium collapsed in 1976 when the 42nd Amendment shifted education to the concurrent list. Parliament gained overriding authority, justified in the name of national integration, but in truth, weakening states. The Supreme Court has also compounded this problem by stretching entry 68. A clause meant only for the coordination and determination of standards was reinterpreted as a license for the Union to dictate admissions, curricula, and governance. There are 2 issues I'd like to talk about in education. One, Article 254(1) says, only plenary laws of Parliament can prevail over plenary laws enacted by state legislatures. Yet, unelected bureaucrats framing subordinate legislation, rules, regulations, and circulars, now claim supremacy over state legislation. The UGC, for instance, asserts that its regulations override state university laws passed by state assemblies and assented to by governors or presidents. This dispute has paralyzed university governance in several states. In Tamil Nadu, 12 out of 20 Vice-Chancellor posts remain vacant because of this dispute. The Supreme Court has given confusing judgments. Some 2 benches have said, ruled in favor of UGC. Others have ruled in favor of the state governments. I think the matter has to be resolved by a constitutional bench, and the Supreme Court has been sitting over it for several months now. Another instrument of control is the governor's role as Chancellor of state universities. A practice dating back to 1857, when governors of Calcutta, Bombay, and Madras were made chancellors to ensure colonial oversight. This was once India became independent, governors should have been removed from this role, but in the first 20 years, because Congress ruled both in the center and the states, and the chief ministers were powerful and governors were merely ceremonial figures, nobody bothered. But after 1967, when several opposition parties came to power in different states, there has been continuous friction between the governor and the state governments. The Supreme Court has ruled that as far as his constitutional duties are concerned, the governor is bound by the recommendations of the Council of Ministers in most cases. But as far as his statutory functions are concerned, like his role as the chancellor of a university, he is not bound by the cabinet's recommendations. So this has led to head-on conflict. And as you know, the result is 12 out of 20 universities being headless in Tamil Nadu and similarly in many other states, opposition-ruled states. So what's the way forward? Restore education to the state list by reversing the 42nd Amendment, judicial reinterpretation of Entry 66 to restrict it to broad minimum standards, not state regulation of state universities, replace tight grants with flexible block funding, restructure regulators like UGC and AICTI into federal councils, abolish governor as chancellor of state universities. Ladies and gentlemen, when our constitution was framed, public health was placed in the state list. The framers understood that health is local, epidemics vary, cultural practices differ, and patients' needs change across regions. Tamil Nadu's hospitals cannot be governed on the same principles as Assam's. But this federal balance was badly eroded. The 42nd Amendment of 1976 moved education, including medical education, into the concurrent list. A domain once reserved for states became shared with the union. From admissions to curricula center, the control has shifted to Delhi. Like the camel in the Arab's tent, the center has increasingly monopolized health administration. Earlier, states shaped how doctors were trained and admitted. Today, with the NEET examination and the National Medical Commission, everything is centralized. A student in Mizoram is judged by the same criteria as one in Delhi, though their communities face very different disease burdens and health priorities. Some people say, what is wrong with NEET? After all, it is testing merit. Don't we need entrance test to test merit? There are many things wrong with NEET. I'll just tell one of them. NEET doesn't mean merit. The average cutoff for NEET UG, that is NEET MBBS, in the last 5 years has hovered around 20%. For NEET PG, the cutoff in 2023 was 0%. Please believe me, it was 0%. And in 2024, it was a mere 5%. For NEET super specialties, the cutoff in both 2023 and 2024 was 0%. Now, these absurdly low thresholds are the product of pressure from private medical colleges that cannot otherwise fill their seats. What is the point of forcing students through a brutal high-stakes exam if the bar is then set so low? The damage is real. Higher secondary students neglect their school curriculum for NEET coaching. MBBS students neglect clinical skills to cram for NEET PG, which tests theory but ignores bedside ability. And in NEET super specialties, Supreme Court said reservation should not be there because it is super specialty, but the cutoff mark is 0 even for NEET PG. Even more striking, and I think not enough people are talking about this, the Supreme Court has actually helped in this, aided and abetted in this creeping centralization. And one classic example is regarding the All India quota in medical seats. In 1984 Pradeep Jain case, the Supreme Court said 15% of MBBS seats in state medical colleges should be set apart for All India quota to promote national integration and interstate mobility. Okay, we can accept 15%. In 2017, Dinesh Singh Chauhan case, Supreme Court extended the All India quota in postgraduate seats in state medical colleges to 50%. That's asking for too much. And in 2020, Tamil Nadu Medical Officers Association case, the Supreme Court mandated that 100% of the super specialty states should be earmarked for all India quota. Now, a state sets up PG seats, PG departments, super specialty departments, with considerable expense, and then the Supreme Court comes in and says 50% of these seats or 100% of the seats should be earmarked for all India quota. This is unacceptable. The consequences are troubling. States that invest heavily in medical education, medical institutions lose control over large chunks of seats, while underinvesting states reap disproportionate benefits. Local language doctors decline, undermining rural and primary healthcare. If 100% of your seats are taken by outsiders, who is going to work in your primary health center and who is going to work in your rural areas? If states cannot retain the fruits of their own investment, why would they be motivated to build new medical colleges? Why should government of Tamil Nadu start new super specialties or new PG courses if Tamil Nadu students can get admission? And BREs, and I'm nothing against BREs or ODIs, but I'm just saying if BREs and ODIs are going to come and study, and we are going to spend our taxpayers' money to set up these facilities. A fairer model is needed. All India quota should be capped at 15% across all levels. This would balance national mobility with respect for state investment and local health priorities. So these are some of the centralizing aspects, and lessons from abroad are similar as in the case of education. In Canada, the union sets only broad principles. The provinces run all the health programs. In Australia, the union and states negotiate funding through health reform agreements. In Germany, health institutions are co-governed by the center and the states. In the United States, health delivery is largely through states. So everywhere, in all other federations, there is only national oversight, but the states are free to implement health programs. So what are the pathways to reform? Medical education, along with the rest of the education, should be brought back to state list. Supreme Court should stop interpreting entry 66 broadly. It should be restricted only to enforcement of minimum standards. Government of India should replace tied schemes with block grants. And the National Medical Commission, which has been set up, states barely have any representation in it, though hospitals and dispensaries are state subjects. At least I would recommend that at least 75% of the members of the National Medical Commission should be drawn from states. Thank you.